Take your time.
She, I had my head down, and she said, Joe, are you there? And I could hear her, but I couldn't respond.
831-169 Christopher Wren versus AffinityLifestyles.com Inc.
We had some issue to discuss, I think.
That's correct, Your Honor. Good morning. You want me to just go right into it, Your Honor?
Sure.
So, what came up, Your Honor, after,
I missed the words. Say that.
I said what started with
Okay.
the opening, the real water, and then the real water opening included comments about taking responsibility for the plaintiff's medical bills. And repeatedly, Mr. Odou said that real water takes responsibility for this, take responsibility for that, referring to each one of the plaintiff's medical bills. And then since the opening, we've called a few of the plaintiffs, and towards the end of the cross-examination, again, real water will indicate to the plaintiff in front of this jury that real water has taken responsibility for those medical bills. In fact, the amount of the medical bills will be placed on a record, and right after that, you understand that real water has taken responsibility for those medical bills, or accepts responsibility. Your Honor, that's a false statement. It's a false premise, and it has to be corrected on the record. This jury cannot be left with the impression that real water has taken responsibility or accepts responsibility for those medical bills. Now, there was a line drawn between past and future medical bills, which we understand, but in all honesty, Your Honor, and I don't believe there's any dispute by real water on this point. Real water has not paid a single penny of any of these plaintiffs' medical bills, past, and certainly is not, we know they've not agreed to the future. Or the Gallagher trial or the Hun-Woyson trials, which they made the same comments. I wasn't going to add that, but I appreciate Mr. Kemp reminding me of that, Your Honor. The point being, Your Honor, when I brought this to the court's attention, I didn't expect it to be a continuing comment, a continuing question, a continuing acknowledgement to the jury that they've taken some type of financial responsibility for the past medical bills. And Your Honor, it seems to be looking at what I consider to be the closest comparison in terms of the case law, an in-round or a circumvention, I would say, of the collateral source rule. And I know right off the top, Your Honor, your mind is thinking collateral source typically is the third party, not the tortfeasor. And that's correct, Your Honor. The first case in Nevada dealing head-on with the collateral source rule was the Proctor case. You probably remember that, Your Honor. That was Judge Sally Lohr's case. Supreme Court decided in 1996 that it would follow the Supreme Court, the Eichel case of the U.S. Supreme Court, and indicating that there will be, under no circumstances, collateral source introduced into trials. And they believing that the prejudice certainly outweighed any probative value. That case was followed by the Bass-Davis case. Now, everybody knows the Bass-Davis case, but typically the Bass-Davis case deals with issues in terms of spoliation of evidence, that type of thing. But the last part of the Bass-Davis case, Your Honor, which is the 2006 case, U.S. Nevada Supreme Court case, was the improper admission of collateral source information dealing with workers' comp benefits, Your Honor. And I would point to page, I think this is page 454. The site is 122 Nevada 442. And it says the district court erred in admitting evidence that Bass-Davis received compensation from her employer during her leave of absence. The district court's admission of the evidence damaged Bass-Davis's credibility in the eyes of the jury because it suggested that Bass-Davis brought a wage claim for which it had already been compensated. Now, I want the court to concentrate and focus on that point, but the most recent case, which I think really drives the nail on this fact, on this point, is the 2012 Tri-County case. Your Honor, again, a Nevada Supreme Court case, the site is 128 Nevada 352.
What, say the name and site again on the.
Sure, that's Tri-County Equipment and Leasing LLC versus Klinke, Klinke. And the site being known as 128 Nevada 352, 2012 case. And this, to me, was a big point raised in the concurring opinion by Justice Gibbons and Sherry. And it says here, Your Honor, the focal point of the collateral source rule is not whether an injured person has incurred certain medical expenses, rather it is whether a tort victim has received benefits from a collateral source that cannot be used to reduce the amount of damage owed by a tort fees. What is the goal, I believe, in Real Water asking those questions and making those pronouncements and during opening, was to suggest to this jury that Real Water has been nice enough to take on that responsibility financially, when in fact not a single plaintiff has received a penny. And so taking responsibility means actually paying the bills. It's not saying it, making this grandiose statement with no intention to ever pay a penny. And that's what's happened. We've had the Gallagher case, like Mr. Kemp said. We had the
So what would you like me to do?
So, and I came up with what I believe to be an appropriate curative instruction. One, there's a go-ahead, there's a point that I think we should make going forward. That question should not be asked, or that statement should not be made about taking responsibility, because that's not true. I think what the curative instruction should be, Real Water has not taken financial responsibility or paid for plaintiff's medical bills, and therefore you will disregard Real Water's counsel's questions and or remarks that Real Water has taken responsibility for plaintiff's injuries and medical bills. I think that's a fair curative instruction, and I think if Mr. Odou would refrain from making those statements going forward with each of the other plaintiffs, I think that will take care of that issue.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Response.
Thank you. I'm Joel Odou on behalf of the Real Water defendants. I would point out a couple of things to start. In the Gallagher trial, it was Mr. Parker. Mr. Parker, who said in voir dire, Real Water had taken responsibility for admitting liability and for the medical bills. So I think that that's important because also in the Gallagher trial, the issue came up about introducing evidence of past medical bills. And he is flat wrong as to the goal of introducing the past medical bills. The goal of introducing the past medical bills is twofold. One of them is to show the jury that that's not going to be on the jury verdict form. And I'll get to that in a minute because I actually said that to the jury both in voir dire and also possibly in opening. I didn't get an objection in opening, so I wasn't prepared today to talk about whatever they claimed that I said that was improper in opening. The second goal is it's a measuring stick. It's a measuring stick as to the level of injury that the plaintiff suffered. It's not an accurate measuring stick. The plaintiffs will argue that I'm going to argue that 3 times medical specials for pain and suffering is reasonable. I haven't made that argument yet. I don't plan on making that argument. But I do think it's helpful for the jury to understand how badly some of these people were injured in trying to come up with their general damages. And we have never tried to minimize the extent of the injuries to any of the plaintiffs.
So I think though, that, and maybe, and I'm interrupting you, but, and so maybe you're gonna get to this, but, I don't think their plaintiff's issue is, with the amounts or, using it potentially as a measuring stick type of thing. I think their argument is more that, Real Water is, the way I take plaintiff's argument. Real Water is leaving this false impression in the jurors' minds of Real Water has taken responsibility for these various damages, and therefore, implied in that is this, counter to punitive damages and or, potentially as well, which, you know, I think is part of plaintiff's argument when they're citing Bass Davis, there's, hey, this type of thing, you as the attorney testifying essentially of real waters taking responsibilities, damaging plaintiff's credibility. So I don't know that it's, you know, their argument's really like amount-wise, but more this taking responsibility when nothing's been paid. So what do you say along those lines?
Yeah, Your Honor, I'd like to address that. And, I was getting to that point.
Yeah, that's what you said. Maybe you are, so I apologize.
No worries, Your Honor. I want to address something that is the problem here. And the problem is that's not what I said. And I do have my direct quotes. I did pull them. Mr. Parker just referenced one of what he says is a quote from me, which is inaccurate. He unfortunately left some things out, possibly unintentionally. But really what this goes to, the Leosh case and the DeSuze versus Flick case both talk about the importance of making a timely objection. And I think the problem here is the objection wasn't timely. And the reason why that's a problem is because now my words are being taken both out of context and improperly recited back to the court. I would note that in the case of the first reference that they gave me notice that they were complaining about, which was the carrier plaintiff, that direct exam was conducted by Mr. Merkovich. Mr. Merkovich did not raise an objection at the time, nor was one raised later. Instead, that objection was raised much later by Mr. Parker. And the problem with that is what I said to Mr. Carrier was, and you understand that real water is responsible, and that's not something for the jury to see, but real water is responsible for that. Do you understand that? And he said, I do. So real water is responsible, and this is in reference to the medical costs of the carrier baby. I didn't say real water has taken responsibility. I didn't say that real water has paid those costs. Certainly on redirect, Mr. Merkovich could have said, has real water paid? The answer would have been no. Certainly in the future, if the court would like, I can ask that. Real water has not paid. This is not a collateral source issue. Collateral source issue is completely irrelevant, and I guess that was the best they could do on case law. But the point is, Mr. Merkovich did not raise an objection. Mr. Merkovich did not address it in redirect exam. Mr. Merkovich had raised an objection. Certainly we could have dealt with the issue right then and right there, but we weren't able to. And so I think a curative instruction is highly prejudicial. Next, we want to talk about Jorge Morales and what I asked him. I said, and this is a direct quote reading from the transcript at page 136, Mr. Morales, Joel Odou for real water. Thank you for sharing with the jury what you went through and what Severin went through. I'm very sorry for that. Obviously, real water made your child sick, and that was a terrible experience. I'm sorry about that. The amount of medical costs that you've had to pay for Severin's treatment is about $352,000. Does that sound right to you? Yes, is the answer. And my next question, obviously, real water is responsible for that. I want to ask you how you're doing. So I didn't say real water has taken responsibility. I pointed out the obvious fact that real water is responsible for that. Your Honor, as you may recall, there was a motion for summary judgment as to these medical costs. You'll also recall that the only opposition that real water provided to that motion for summary judgment was that some of the charges were unrelated to this case. In the case of Severin Morales, real water, this is a quote from our opposition, quote unquote opposition, it was really a limited opposition. Real water, the minor Morales is claiming $357,274.25 in past medical bills. This is reading from our opposition. Page 6, line 4. The real water defendants do not dispute these amounts are usual, customary, and reasonable for the care sought by the minor Morales. Okay. So, right in the motion for summary judgment as to Ms. Morales, or excuse me, minor Morales, and also for Christopher Wren on page 5, lines 15 through 17 of our opposition, we said the same thing about Christopher Wren. The minor Wren is claiming $215,352 $4.80 in past medical bills. The real water defendants do not dispute these amounts are usual, customary, and reasonable for the care sought by minor Wren. Your Honor, when this motion for summary judgment was reduced to an order, it wasn't just an order of this court, it was a stipulation by Real Water as to those dollar amounts. And so Real Water stipulated that those dollar amounts are reasonable and customary. So again, there's nothing that we have said that's been pointed out to us that's improper. We have used the dollar amounts for really a very simple purpose, to make sure the jury understands they're not going to see that on the verdict. That's the first most important part of it, because the jury does need to understand that they're not going to have an opportunity to award this, because this has been awarded by the court. They haven't been paid by Real Water. That has nothing to do with it. The collateral source doesn't have anything to do with this. Those are orders of this court, and we don't want confusion when the jury renders its verdict. And the second reason, again, is it shows the magnitude of the injury. When when the jury goes to deliberate, they will see there are various levels of injury that the plaintiffs have suffered. They're not all the same. They shouldn't all be treated the same. Some are a lot more than others. They're all significant. We've never tried to minimize that. And so, Your Honor, we think this objection is untimely. Mr. Pepperman conducted the direct exam of Mr. Morales. Mr. Pepperman didn't object. Instead, Mr. Kemp and Mr. Parker have objected. Again, I don't have the problem. They just thought of it, perhaps, whatever. But it's always been this court's rule. The person conducting the exam, at least we take that back. They've been our understanding of this court's rule. The person conducting the exam will be the one objecting. Perhaps we want to do it differently. I don't have a problem with that. But I do have a problem when the objection is not timely, so it can't be corrected if there's an issue. If we've said something that this court says, you know what, Mr. Odou, I'm going to sustain an objection, rephrase, that's fine, we'll rephrase. But to now say, 2 days later, that they should be entitled to an instruction is inappropriate. And again, there's been no representation by us ever that there's a collateral source issue here or that we pay.
You're repeating now. So
That's my end, Your Honor.
That's okay.
Thank you. Did you have questions, Your Honor?
No, thank you very much. Anything briefly further from Clint?
Sure, Your Honor. It appears to me that Mr. Odou has conceded one point, that if that's the impression, he shouldn't do it any further. He suggests that perhaps we waive the objection in the prior plaintiffs, but if he's agreeing not to do that in the future, that takes care of one issue. The only other thing I think we need to address, Your Honor, is preventing the jury from having this false impression.
So, thank you. So what I need for plaintiffs on the last part is a trial brief. It doesn't have to be long, but one thing I would need is actual portions of transcripts that plaintiffs have an issue with. I think there is a distinction to be made between, phrases, and my memory is not perfect, so I need to see transcripts. It's represented, words of effect of Real Water has said, well, Real Water has taken responsibility, or words to that effect. Maybe they've said that, maybe they've been, have not used those words, but, so if you have those, I'd love to see them. So I need that in order to evaluate whether, any curative instruction should be given. In terms of right now, I think it's fair to order, and again, I'm not commenting that Real Water has said this phrase, because, we deal in words and stuff has been said that's fairly close, certainly, but I don't know if they've. So, Real Water, there is no evidence that Real Water has taken responsibility. Any layperson would, in hearing a phrase like that, would assume, paid. They clearly have not paid. And so the court prohibits, the use of the phrase taken responsibility, real wires, taken responsibility. Question for plaintiff that I forgot to ask. So there is a stipulation on past medical bills. I assume we're going to put, but there's been discussion of past medical bills, and there has not been objections to that. Is plaintiff objecting to questions along the lines of the past medical bills? Like I know the question or two was like, so your medical bills, your past medical bills, 350,000 or whatever, does that sound about right? Yes. Is there any objection to that type of question?
Your Honor, Mr. Kemp is indicating that we're not objecting to that.
Okay. Yeah.
And Your Honor, one other just quick question.
Sure.
I believe I also took from Mr. Odou's comments that we have the right to inform the jury through our questioning of our clients that the order is not paid for their medical bills.
Yeah, that's a slippery slope, because that would you right to bankruptcy and insurance issues in your insurer's mind, so I'd rather not even have to, once he climbs up, he'll climb down it that way. I think that's a slippery slope.
So that, I put that in the court's mind because that will be part of the trial brief.
Yeah, I mean, happy to consider that, but certainly right now, to be clear, the order is, and I can't say no more of, because I don't know if they've said this exactly, but I can certainly say going forward, no use of the phrase real water is taking responsibility or real water took responsibility. I think it's fair to distinguish like a phrase that may have been used, real water is responsible for. I think that's different than has taken responsibility, but so. And welcome to trial brief, because words are important and I don't have a perfect memory. Anything else?
That's it, Your Honor.
Okay. And to be fair, defendants welcome to file a trial brief on the points as well as if defendant wants to, that's totally fine.
And then a couple of side issues. Miss Converse was a no-show today.
So,
Mr. Crawford's is utter amazement. No. So we will be playing her video at some point, maybe not today.
okay.
And then Mr. Marlow is due at 1 o'clock. And so even if we're in the middle of someone, which I think we will be, I'd like to get him on and off just because he's super free.
Who are we starting with?
We're going to start with Mrs. Tegano, Your Honor.
Okay.
Live witness.
So we might start with her and break it at some point, get Mr. Marlow in.
Yeah, I don't need
That sounds great, Your Honor.
Mr. Kaufman and I have done a no-no list for Mr. Marlow.
That is correct, Your Honor. We've agreed on this.
I know you both mentioned, he tends to speak his mind. So we'll start with Mrs. Tegano and see how that goes. Mr. Marlow.
Please rise for the jury. Please be seated.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for your service, and now we're for your patience with us as we deal with real life. So appreciate your patience with us very much. Our plaintiffs ready to proceed.
We are, Your Honor. Please call Mrs. Tegano. Your Honor.
Right this way. Please look at that. If you will remain standing, raise your right hand, face the clerk, be sworn in.
You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please be seated. State and spell your first and last name for the record.
My name is Sylvia Tegano. Sylvia.
Good morning, Mrs. Tegano, how are you?
Fine.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
I know it's late in the morning, but we'll try to get Mrs. Tegano done today, or this morning. And we'll start with Mr. Tegano, provided we don't have another witness here at 1 o'clock. So we may go with a different witness and then Mr. Tegano, just to give you guys a heads up. I got some sinus issues going on, so I apologize. Mrs. Tegano, let me have you, I'm in a bad spot because I want to be able to be heard on the record here, but I don't want you to look at me necessarily because I want you to be able to look at the jury, so I may be going in between this space, okay?
Sure.
All right. So, Mr. Tegano, tell me how long you lived in Las Vegas?
I've lived in Las Vegas for 46 years.
46 years. And how long have you been married to Mr. Tegano?
It's going to be 45 years in August.
And when did you move to Las Vegas?
1978.
Perfect. Where did you go to school?
I went to school in New York, a state school, upstate New York, Cortland. It was a teacher's college.
And after your BA, did you get a master's?
I did.
And what did you get your master's degree in?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
What did you get your master's
Oh,
degree
yeah,
in?
educational administration.
All right, so you had a plan to be a teacher.
Oh, yes, I've been a teacher for many years.
And when you moved to Las Vegas, what was your first job?
At Western High School.
Ah, hold on. Let me pick this stuff up.
Sure.
I decided to put all my new exhibits in a folder as opposed to the binder, so they're loose. All right. Let's start again. All right, let's start again. Sorry about that.
Yes, my first job in Las Vegas in 1978 was at Western High School.
Got it. Now, what did you teach at Western High School?
Western High School, I taught physical education, but I had other specialty areas which were kind of my passion, which was to teach handicapped students. So I taught handicapped students in adaptive physical education. I also taught gymnastics and dance.
All right. It's my understanding you taught there from 1978 to 1985. Is that
Yes.
right or wrong?
Yes, yes.
I got broad numbers.
Yeah, 85, I was there, I believe it, I'm trying to think, let me get
Take
my,
your time.
I was there for at least 13 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely off on those days. 13 years at Western
Oh,
High
I'm
School.
sorry, I was there about 7 years and then I went to another school.
Oh, that makes more
I'm
sense.
sorry, yes,
Okay. Because my understanding is you were a PE teacher at Western,
yes,
and then you moved to Bonanza High School.
yes,
All right.
I'm
So-
sorry, yes.
Okay, what did you do at Bonanza High School?
Basically the same thing. When I was there, I also was asked to be a student council, in charge of leadership in student council there, and it was fun.
All right. So while you were talking, I'm starting to work a little bit of the logistics in the room. So I moved this speaker here. I got a speaker here, so I think I should be captured by the record, okay?
Great.
All right, thank you. Now, after Bonanza High School, did you go to Green Valley High School?
Yes, in a different position.
And what position did you take at Green Valley High School?
Dean of students,
Okay.
that was considered an administrative position, so I moved from a teacher to an administrator, and at Green Valley High School.
What made you want to move from teaching to administration?
It's a great question. I think some of my peers who were also moving into administration suggested that I do that, and I was agreeable to do it, and we sort of moved together with my peer group.
Okay. And so how long were you at Green Valley High School?
About a semester, because then I was asked to go to open up the Las Vegas Academy, and there was a 6-month opening time where I went over for planning purposes due to my arts background. And Las Vegas Academy is a school for the arts.
Okay, and you were there until roughly 1999?
Yes, 1992, yes,
And then finally, I believe you went to K.O. Knudsen, or Knudsen?
Knudsen, yes,
And that was a middle school.
yes.
And you were the principal there from roughly 1999 to 2005? Is
Yes,
that correct?
yes,
And then finally, you retired from the Clark County School District in 2005, is that correct?
yes. Mhm.
All right, and you've not taught anyone here?
I don't think so.
Good. All right, good
That's
enough.
not-
I was hoping you would say no to that question, okay?
I don't think so. Yes, no, I don't believe so.
All right. Now, it's my understanding that despite spending all that time at the Clark County School District, ultimately you unretired and went back to work.
Well, I never really thought that retiring is just doing other learning experiences, so I went for my doctorate then at UNLV. And then in educational administration, and I worked in different kinds of, in different capacities within different agencies for education within the state of Southern Nevada and the state.
You've devoted your life to education.
I think it found me as much as I found it. It's something, a passion I have for it, yes.
Yeah. So I want to now transition from your work life to your family life. Okay?
Yes.
When did you get married to Mr. Tegano?
1979, August 25th.
And I brought you up first because now, when I ask Mr. Tegano that same question, he'll know the right answer, okay? So, after getting married to Mr. Tegano in August of 1979, did you guys have children right away, or did you wait a little bit?
About 2 years?
And you had your first daughter, correct?
Yes.
And what's her name?
Janine?
And it's my understanding that Janine has 2 children,
She does,
a boy and a girl.
yes.
And Janine, I believe, is married to a Clark, is she married to a fire department person?
Yes, she is.
And what is his position?
He's a chief now in the fire department,
And is he with Clark County, the city of Henderson, what department is he with?
Clark County.
And then 2 years later, I believe you had another daughter?
Yes.
And what's her name?
Her name is Christina.
And I believe Christina also married a fireman.
Yes, she did.
So for some reason there's an affinity for firemen in your family.
Yes.
Okay. And I believe they have also 2 children.
Yes,
So you and Mr. Tegano have 4 grandchildren.
correct.
Now, is it fair to say, Mrs. Tegano, that you're familiar with Mr. Tegano's habits in terms of when he purchased real water, his habit of drinking real water, and then when he ultimately stopped drinking real water?
Yes.
Good. Did you drink real water?
No.
What water did you prefer in your house?
Well, I always drink the water from the refrigerator and from the, we have a reverse osmosis system in the sink by our in the kitchen. So I just drank that.
Do you have any pets?
Yes.
Did you feed the pets real water?
No, I take care of our dog, and so I just give her the kitchen water or the osmosis water
Okay.
from the sink.
So you've heard from, and I know you and your husband, you've been here the last 3 or 4 days.
Yes,
So you've heard some testimony either by video or by live witness of not only people getting sick, but pets getting sick.
yes.
So fortunately, neither yourself nor your pet.
Objection, Your Honor.
One second. So I can proceed.
Sure.
Thank you, Your Honor. So fortunately, either you or your pet got sick because you didn't drink your water, correct?
Correct.
Now, it's my understanding that Mr. Tegano began purchasing real water sometime in December of 1999. Is that your recollection?
Yes, around then. I don't have the exact date.
What was the name?
Around December of 1999.
Real,
Okay, now?
Sure.
We're good? Okay. So, Mr. Tegano, sometime in October, November of 2020, do you recall Mr. Tegano becoming ill?
Yes, sir.
And you make me feel really bad when you say yes, sir.
Oh, yes.
you can call him, sir, that's
Okay.
Either way. So, I'm gonna try not to drop this again. But sometime in November, beginning of November, do you remember Mr. Tegano actually going into the hospital?
Yes.
And do you recall prior to him going into the hospital, how he was acting or how he seemed to be in your opinion, his condition?
I do.
Could you describe that to the jury, please?
Well, he started to become reserved. He's kind of gregarious and kind of lighthearted, and just started becoming more withdrawn. And it was like, we had October, which was, maybe Halloween, and, kind of have fun with the holidays and so forth, but just didn't seem in the spirit of things like he used to. And I was watching him and just making sure, everything was okay. I would ask him, "You doing okay?" Yeah, everything's fine. I think, okay.
Was he that kind of person, the kind of guy who would kind of shrug off being ill?
Yes, and yes. So I didn't want to be, a pest, so to speak, but I just wanted to know, are you okay? And I just felt that he was being more withdrawn.
Yes, ma'am.
And I don't think it was like just to put me off. I feel it was more of he was just becoming more into himself and sitting down a little more and just exhibiting behaviors that made me think that wasn't doing okay.
Did you notice him having any problems in terms of concentration, confusion, anything like that?
In our conversations, I felt he wasn't as sharp or as easily responsive to kinds of things that we would talk about. I would ask it again and maybe wouldn't even answer me at all. And I just felt uncomfortable with those kinds of behaviors at that time from him.
Did he exhibit any fatigue or seemingly tired?
Yes. Yes, he would just be sitting down more off to the side, just not doing what he usually did. And it was concerning to me because that just wasn't how he was. And I felt he may not be feeling good and just not wanting to tell me, but I would kind of pursue and say, "What's going on? Can I get you something?" And just being more aggressive in terms of asking him and doing things more. But he seemed to get more sullen and a little bit more into himself is the best way I can say it. And I just watched him.
Did he ever complain to you about having double vision or problems with his sight?
He didn't complain to me about that. It was mostly upset stomach.
Yes, ma'am. And I appreciate what you just said. Is Mr. Tegano a complainer?
No.
Do you consider yourself a complainer?
Yes. I share more than he does.
I understand. Do you think, knowing who he is, it's going to be difficult for him to describe to this jury what he was going through?
Possibly I do. I'm not sure he was aware of it, number one, and he might have brushed off some things that shouldn't have been. If you were, if you're around someone, you see that they're different, something's going on, you have to act, I believe.
Yes, ma'am. Did you notice any unsteadiness in terms of his gait, the way he walked, the way he carried himself?
I saw him reaching for things a little more to like go, just like right along the furniture to get to the bathroom or something. I just get, "You okay in there?" And just more questions, making sure, watching him, and he would just favor reaching for things to go sit down. That wasn't what he would do.
And did he ever complain, to use the word complain, did you ever notice that he was dizzy or acted as if he was dizzy?
I thought so, yes, I did, I thought so, and that's, him sitting up, his posture wasn't as
Correct.
erect and strong like he used to. It was more just leaning into things and just kind of the head. I would just notice him.
At some time, Mrs. Tegano, did he pass out in front of
Yes,
you?
yes.
Describe that to the jury.
Actually, it was when he was going for a blood work. He needed to go for blood work. His doctor said get him for some blood work, and we went there to LabCorp, and I got him there. We walked in the car, walked into the, and he was there. Went back to give the blood, and then a tech came out a couple of minutes after he went in, and she said, "Come on back." So I went back there, and you know how those chairs are with like you give blood, and it's like he was hunched over, his head was down, and he was unresponsive. And I looked at the tech and I said, like, "What's going on?" She said, "Well, he fainted, and see if you can talk to him." I said, "Okay, well," I said, "Okay, I said, Joe, are you okay? Are you okay?" Rubbing his back, and I felt he was trying to communicate with me, but he really couldn't. He really couldn't. And
What
they
did you
had
do
called.
next?
I said, what are we gonna do? Should we call the fire department? We called for the fire department, paramedics.
Yes, ma'am. And did the paramedics arrive at LabCorp?
Yeah, they did. And I was outside the little room, and he was in there, and they said we might want to transport him, so they got the gurney out, and they got him all ready, and they put him up. But apparently, whatever they were doing, I don't remember exactly what they were doing, if they gave him an IV or something. By the time we got out, the paramedics seemed to feel that he was like being more responsive, which he was. I could see his eyes, and he was more aware at that time.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
He was more aware at that time.
Yes, ma'am. Did you ultimately take him home as opposed to going to the hospital?
I did. And the reason for that was I wasn't sure what I should do exactly, and I asked the paramedics. I'm not sure if I called Dr. Preble or not, I think I did, but you know, a little bit older, and the COVID was such a fearful time that it's like at all stage, we didn't want to like have to go to the hospital, you know, just try to stay really healthy so we didn't have to go to the hospital. So the paramedics kind of advised me, said, you know, ma'am, the hospitals are packed with COVID, it's so bad, and it's like, we think he's like doing okay, he goes, it's your decision, but if you think he can go home, it's probably a better place for him. I said, okay, so we went home.
Okay. And so this is, just to give the context of the jury, this is November 5th when this happened. And that you may not remember, does that refresh your recollection, please?
Yeah, 5th, 6th, yeah, yes, right in that time.
The following day, I believe he went to see Dr. Prabhu, is that correct?
Believe so, yes, and he said, no, it was the, Dr. Prabhu sent us to the LabCorp, I believe.
Okay.
And we went home, and then he wasn't okay, I don't believe, and I think that night we went to the hospital.
Okay. The hospital records indicate that you went on November 6th, 2000.
Okay.
The following day.
Okay,
All right. Did you go to the hospital with him?
yes,
Were you able to stay with him despite the COVID restrictions?
I did.
Do you recall him being tested and receiving elevated liver test results?
Yes, it's the first I heard of it, the liver enzymes.
Yes.
Liver enzymes, the liver. I was like, okay.
So I'm going to show you Exhibit 824, Your Honor. I believe
I'm
these
going to object. Can I approach, please? Sure.
You're welcome. So Joel, could you put up Exhibit 824? Your Honor, right, please? Sure. Okay. Shane, can you put up 824 for me? So, Mrs. Tegano, I'm not gonna go through all the medical records with you. I just wanted to show you the AST. First, I wanted you to see the date. So the collection date, highlight. So the collection date was November 5th. That's the date we talked about. And then the date in the hospital, go to the top right for me, Shane, was November 6th, just so you can remember the dates. Okay, does that help a little bit?
Sequence, yes.
Okay, perfect. One other thing I want to make sure we're clear on. Mr. Tegano began buying real water in 2019, not 1999, if I said that. I want to make sure we're clear on that.
2000, yes.
Okay, good. So now that you see the dates, hopefully that helps refresh your recollection. November 5th, in terms of blood tests, and those are taken, and then November 6th, in terms of admission to the hospital. All right. And these are the AST, ALT scores that he received in terms of his liver function test. You understand that?
Okay, yes, I see them.
Okay, is this what you were talking about in terms of liver enzymes?
That's all I heard. I didn't know these numbers. I didn't know what they were.
Yeah.
I heard people talking and I'm like, what's that?
Absolutely. And so I would suggest to you that most people aren't walking around knowing what their ALT and AST scores should be. All right. Now, at some time after this, or while you're in the hospital, are you informed that Mr. Tegano had some form of acute hepatitis?
I don't remember being informed of that.
Were you informed that there was some liver injury he suffered that was causing his symptoms?
I don't recall him telling me that. I just heard the term liver enzymes.
Yes, sir. Now, it's my understanding that he was there November 6th and November 7th. Do you remember that?
Yes,
Okay. Do you recall a period of time, perhaps only one day, before he had to go back to the hospital?
yes.
Okay. What's your recollection of that?
So when he came home, and then he still wasn't doing okay. He still wasn't doing okay. And I figured if he came home, he would be okay. But he wasn't. And it was very harrowing because I wanted him to be better. And I didn't feel he was better. And I would talk to my daughters and say, you know, I don't feel he's doing any better. We would FaceTime. I said, look at him, what do you think? And I felt I had to take him back to the hospital because I didn't feel he was doing well.
Okay, so the following, that was in the 8th, that he was not in the hospital. Then on the 9th, you took him back to the hospital?
Yes, I believe so.
Did you drive him to the hospital?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And were you able to stay within the hospital the following 2 days?
I
That's
stayed
it.
with him.
Did your daughters have the ability to come to the hospital and visit with you?
One daughter did, I believe, yes.
And while he was at the hospital, was he drinking the real water?
At the hospital?
Yes.
I don't think so.
Did his symptoms improve while at the hospital?
Yes.
And did he have an understanding, strike that, did you have an understanding of what was causing him to have these problems?
No.
Was that part of the issue, not knowing what was causing the problem?
I would say yes. Yes, because I didn't think we were doing anything different than we usually did, and he was getting sick.
Yes, ma'am. You never thought that was the water causing his injuries?
No.
Eventually, he got out on November 10th, correct?
Okay, yes.
How was he after he got out?
He seemed to be more conversational. He seemed to be more getting on his feet a little more, resting still. We were still resting. I just pampered him a lot in terms of just doing the meals and doing the kinds of things for him to get better, not pushing him to do anything around the house. And I think his strength seemed to be getting a little better.
How long did it take for him to get back to what you would consider his normal self?
Well, it was the holidays at that point, and we were going through, just stayed at home anyway. It was COVID. We didn't go out much, and maybe we would walk around the block or something. But I felt that he didn't drive. I didn't feel comfortable with him driving. Nobody said that he couldn't drive from a medical perspective, but I just felt that I knew him and I didn't feel comfortable with him driving, so I drove. And that was into January. But we did everything together, so.
That part's a plus, I guess, being together, but in your opinion, did he feel less than himself because he couldn't take care of himself at that point?
He's a fighter. He came, he did the best he could to want to be independent again and wanted to do that. But when it came to the driving, I just wanted to make sure I was being responsible and felt that he was himself again to do that. So I drove. That's all.
Mrs. Tegano, are you aware of Mr. Tegano having liver function tests in this year, for example?
Yes.
As well as, I believe, 2 in the year 2022.
Yes, he's been working on the liver.
Have those tests revealed that his liver tests are abnormal?
Yes, at times they were like up and down and up and down, and they're not consistent, is my understanding.
Yes, ma'am. Do you have a concern that because of his drinking of your water, that he now has permanent injury to his liver?
Next foundation calls for speculation.
You can rephrase.
Sure. Based upon your understanding now of these abnormal liver tests, 2 in the year 2022 and then 1 in March of this year, do you personally have a concern that he may have suffered something permanent to his liver?
I do.
And does that give you concern in terms of how long whether or not your life with Mr. Tegano will change?
Sustained.
I can ask that, I can rephrase that, Sean. Mr. Tegano, does that give you some concern about? Let me ask it this way. Do you have any concerns now because of those tests with your golden years with Mr. Tegano?
Yes.
Could you tell the jury what those concerns are?
Sure. We're very positive people. We are spiritual people. And I just would like to say that however long we have, but I do believe this particular situation has set some sort of finiteness to the whole situation in terms of however long we can enjoy each other. And so that's where I'm at.
Yes, ma'am. You okay?
Yes.
Your Honor, I'll pass the witness. Thank you, Mr. Tegano.
Okay.
Want me to turn these mics back?
No, that's fine. I'm sorry, this is very upsetting. Are you okay to proceed?
I am.
You can take a minute, and I'm not ready. Let me ask you a couple of things that pique my interest about your background. You taught at LVA, Las Vegas Academy.
Well, I didn't teach there, but I was an administrator there, so I helped open it up for the kids. Yes.
And we can see it right out this window, right?
Can I look at it every day?
Okay. And a great institution, Las Vegas Academy for the Performing Arts now?
Yes.
Art, music,
I believe it's art, language, visual arts, languages, dance, band, choir. It's a wonderful school.
film too. Terrific. Sounds like a great career. Thank you for supporting our community. I want to ask you a little bit about your husband. Do you know how much his medical bills are?
Not exactly.
What's your estimate?
His medical bills from
From this
being in
incident?
school, being in the hospital, I'm sorry. 100,000?
Close enough. We'll get to that later. I had the opportunity of looking at the dates that you were talking about and looking on my iPhone to figure out what days of the week, so maybe this will jog your memory, maybe it won't.
Okay.
Sounds like your husband may have gotten sick around a Thursday, November. So first week of November. Do you remember the days of the week that he was sick?
I really don't. I don't remember those days. It just,
It was a terrible experience, I understand. So it looks like he was sick Thursday, Friday. Friday he came home, went to the doctor, and then Friday night he went to the hospital. Does that sound familiar to you at all?
I should know, I'm sorry, I don't recall the exact days. I'm sorry about, I just took him where he needed to go.
Okay. And it sounds like Saturday he was back home, and then Sunday he went back to the hospital. And that rings any bells?
I'm gonna say, okay,
That's fine.
Saturday, Sunday, I'm not sure. I just wasn't sure, it was just a big blur of what I needed to do, and watching him and what he needed to have, what he needed.
Understandable. And looks like he got out of the hospital on Tuesday the 10th, so about 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, 3 weeks before Thanksgiving, something like that.
Okay.
Does that sound about right?
Yes,
And then you and your husband were able to spend Thanksgiving together at home?
yes, we were at home.
Wonderful. Do you have the kids or the grandkids over?
No, we didn't that, and
In this time of COVID?
yes, it was time to come. We didn't.
You're doing great.
We communicated with the phones.
And your husband pretty much got back to his normal self around January?
Yes, a little bit before then I felt he was getting stronger, but the driving was my concern.
And up until that point, up until January of 2021, still no doctor had said, hey, real water made your husband sick, right?
No,
You learned that much later.
yes,
Ms. Tegano, thank you very much for your time. I really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
thank you.
Can you redirect?
Nothing from Plymouth, Your Honor. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions from any commissioners? You can just be careful of that.
Okay, thank you.
Council can come approach. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go ahead and take our lunch break right now. We have another witness scheduled for when we come back. So come back at 1:15. During this recess, you're admonished not to talk or converse amongst yourselves or with anyone else on any subject connected with this trial. Do not read, watch, or listen to any report of the commentary in the trial or any person connected with the trial by any medium of information, including without limitation to social media, text, newspapers, television, internet, radio. Do not visit the scene of any events mentioned during the trial. Do not undertake any investigation. Do not do any postal communications on a social networking site. Do not do any independent research, including internet searches. Do not form or express any opinion on any subject connected with the trial. Till the case finds submitted to you, see bag of 115.
Please rise for the jury.
Before we break, are there any exhibits that you all can admit?
I thought we had an agreement on the other ones I listed. I don't think there was an objection to any of them yesterday.
The issue was I didn't know you were going to use them with Mrs. Tegano, I thought you were going to use them with Mr. Tegano. But I have no objection in they're being used with Mr. Tegano if you plan to call him today or whatever.
Yeah, the ones we do. And the ones that I have are 8/24, which we've already gotten in, through 8/29, y'all. And these are the ones I gave on, I believe, Monday or morning of Tuesday.
I have them, yes, thank you.
So,
And I gave 2 copies to the court too, y'all.
so 8/24 through 8/29 are admitted. Okay. Anything else?
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Please rise for the jury. Please be seated.
Back, ladies and gentlemen, thank you as always for your service. Are plaintiffs ready to proceed?
Commissioner, I would call Mr. John Marlow to the stand, please.
Present. You remain standing, raise your right hand, face the clerk to be sworn in, please.
You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please be seated. State and spell your first and last name for the record.
John Marlow,
And how do you spell it?
Marlow.
Good afternoon, Mr. Marlow.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
Afternoon.
Okay, Mr. Marlow, where did you go to college?
Montana State University, Bozeman, Montana.
And what did you get your degree in?
General Studies.
Did you study architecture?
I majored in architecture, but it's 5 years.
So you wanted to be an architect, but you didn't get the architecture degree.
My fifth-year thesis was rejected, so I graduated in General Studies.
Did you take chemistry in college?
I was high school or college, I believe it was college, yes.
What happened?
Flunked it.
You take it again?
No,
You don't consider yourself a chemist, I take it,
no, I'm not.
and you've never taken a formal chemistry class at any time?
No,
Would you agree that you're not qualified to analyze the chemical process in making bottled water? You're not qualified to do that?
well, I followed the basic guidelines as I understood them.
Okay, but we're gonna get into the guidelines,
Okay.
just in terms of analyzing what's going on. You're not qualified to do that?
No, I'm not expert in that, no.
You're not an expert on water processing, for example,
Neither than self-taught, no.
and you haven't had any courses, you're self-taught, right?
Yes,
Now, at one point, you were affiliated with Real Water,
yes,
and prior to working with Real Water or the invention that ultimately became Real Water, had you had any experience with any other water company?
no,
And same question, you had no other experience with any other alkaline water company, is that correct?
no.
When did you come to Vegas? Roughly?
About 36 or 7 years ago.
Okay, so that would be, let me test my memory, 78, or 78, 88, what?
I'm guessing, I have a real hard time with dates
Okay,
anymore.
it's okay, it's okay.
It's
What-
close.
And what'd you do when you came here?
I was manufacturing portable buildings.
Okay, nothing to do with water.
No.
Now, can you tell me, if you want to look at them closer, can you tell me what these are?
Those are water devices that were developed in Russia.
And you bought these at some point in time, correct?
Yes.
Okay, can you tell the jury how it came to be that you bought these?
Well, I was introduced to a young couple that were from Russia. Their uncle, her uncle, had developed this, and I became fascinated with the whole process.
Okay, what was his name, if you remember?
Vadim and Svetlana were their first names. I don't remember their last name.
That was the couple, the person who sold you the tubes? Do you remember his name?
The car.
Yeah.
Oh boy, I can't think of his last name right off.
Okay, it's okay. So how many of these tubes did you ultimately buy from him?
Probably 8 or 10, something in that range.
And did he tell you what they were for?
Oh yeah,
And what did he tell you? What did he tell you?
well, it makes water alkaline or acidic, depending on which stream you're coming in and out of.
Okay, and they give you instructions on how to use them?
Yes.
Is that oral or in writing?
Boy, I don't remember, but I would probably mostly oral,
Okay,
had several meetings.
if you need to look at these, just let me know, okay?
No, I'm familiar with it.
Okay, so can you just tell the jury how these things were supposed to work?
You have, you have 2 streams of water go in and 2 streams of water come out.
Okay, there's 2 ports here, so
Yes.
one stream went in one stream went in the other.
Yes,
Then one stream came out, one stream came out.
and basically what happens is it splits the water in half. And by that, I mean, you have, high concentration of hydrogen coming out of one side and high concentration of oxygen coming out of the other side.
Okay, and so have you ever cut these open or opened them?
I had one open,
Okay,
they dropped it and broke the diaphragm inside.
okay, can you tell the jury what's on the inside that we can't see because of the titanium?
There's ceramic separator in the center of those tubes.
Okay,
So when the streams of water are going through electrolytically, it holds the water apart.
okay, and that's so one gets the negative and one gets the positive, correct?
Yes.
And the negative would be alkaline
Yes.
and the positive would be acidic?
Yes.
All right, and the idea is to get rid of the acidic and make the water more alkaline?
Well, that was my intent,
Okay,
with real water.
okay,
Yes.
great. Remember how many, let's try to. Now, at some point in time, after you bought the tubes, did you start doing experiments?
Yes.
Can you tell the jury what you did in terms of experiments?
I just played around with different concentrations of salts, as they're called, and variation of the amperage and voltage on the voltmeter.
Okay, Shane, can I have that voltmeter up so we can make sure we know what we're talking about? Can you see there? Nothing's up yet, but no, okay. Okay, that's what you mean by a voltmeter?
Yes. There's
Go ahead.
one dial is amperage and the other is voltage.
Okay, so the amperage looks like it's the one on the left, correct? Says amps right there, do you see that?
Right. Yeah, the left is amps.
And the right's volts.
Yes.
So you started playing around, different amps, different volts.
Yes.
Okay.
I was guided by the Russians for the most part, but you asked me what I was playing around with, and not,
Okay.
yeah,
So
I varied it.
The people that sold you the tubes gave you some kind of general idea.
Right.
Okay. And when you were, as you say, playing around or experimenting, did you actually produce product that was consumable?
In the latter stages, I was drinking it myself, yeah.
Okay. And so, why were you drinking it yourself?
Well, my whole intent was to have a healthy water.
And so, when you were drinking on yourself, you were trying to see how you reacted to it?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes.
And did you have any adverse reactions at any time?
I got a gut ache when I went up to too high alkalinity, a higher degree of alkalinity.
Okay. And when you say higher degree of alkalinity, was there ultimately some alkalinity level you hit that you liked?
I'm trying to remember, but I'd say I was probably up in the 11, 12 range at that point, which is way too high for what should have been.
And so alkalinity goes from 0 to 12. 0 is the,
Well, the acid alkalinity goes from 0 to 12. Yes.
okay. So when you were doing the experiments, you got up to 11 or 12 sometimes,
I assume so, yeah.
and then you backed it down.
Yes.
Remember how you backed it down? More juice, less?
Well, yeah, there was, depending on the amount of salt, depending on the amount of amperage and voltage, there were variables involved, yes.
And when did you actually do this all? 10 years ago, 20 years ago?
Guessing about 16 years ago was probably in the
So-
range.
If it's 2024, that would take us back to about 2008?
I think that's about right, yeah.
Okay, great. Do you remember if it was before or after President Obama was elected, perhaps? Using that as a point time of reference?
I don't,
No memory? Okay.
I'm sorry.
So at some point, you got something that you thought tasted okay and you liked, right?
Yes,
And at that point in time, did you do any tests on any other people or any?
yes.
Okay, can you tell me what you did?
My 2 or 3 good friends, my wife and my dogs. I had 3 dogs at the time.
So you fed it all?
And everybody was having a positive for taste and hydration and all that, yes.
And how long did you feed it to them? Days, weeks, months, what?
I don't remember.
Okay. And did you do any formal testing of it? In other words, did you have a laboratory analyze what you were making or anything like that?
Other than what was required by the health department and that type of thing, I don't recall doing anything, no.
Okay, and would I be right that the health department's usually interested only in bacteria and heavy metals like arsenic?
I didn't get real familiar with that most of,
Okay,
I used a private lab at the time.
so when you developed it, you did it in your house?
Yeah, I guess it was probably in the garage, maybe, I don't know.
Okay, so when you were doing all these experiments, moving the voltage up and down, the amperage?
Yeah, mostly
your
at
house?
home, in my home, yeah.
All right. But ultimately, you came to something that you thought was a good product, right?
Yes,
Now, you familiar with the process of animal testing, where you feed products to animals and see what happens? Generally, with that?
no.
You didn't do any dog with this product, all right? Did you do any?
My dogs drank the water.
Other than the dogs, did you do any type of testing?
No.
Okay. And have you ever heard of a testing machine called a GCMS, gas chromatograph mass spectrometry?
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Did you do any testing on that?
I'm not familiar with that, so I don't know what the lab did or not.
So you've heard of it, but you didn't do anything with it?
No, I didn't.
And do you know of any testing that was done, screening testing, non-targeted testing, any testing by anyone other than what we talked about, the bacteria and the metals?
Not that I recall, no.
Okay. And you're aware that at one point the hydrazine was found by the FDA to be in real water?
I'm aware, yes.
Okay. And prior to that time, did you even know what hydrazine was?
No.
Did you do at any time any non-targeted testing to find something like hydrazine?
No,
And with regards to real water, do you know whether they did that?
I don't know.
Okay. Did you expect, well, let's strike that. At some point in time, you came to some sort of arrangement with real water where you gave them your technology.
Yes,
Remember when that was?
I'd say 13 years ago, I'm guessing, but I think that's pretty good.
And as part of the process, you actually made the concentrate for them to
Originally, yes,
How long did you make the concentrate?
probably 4 or 5 months, or maybe longer, right in there.
And Shane, can I have the slide, please? We don't need to go through this because we've already gone through it a couple times. But basically, you would electrolyze purified water, and you'd run it through the tubes, and then you take 300 gallons and make it 150, then you do it again and make 150 to 75. That's how it's done.
Basically, yes.
And when you put the water through the tubes and you hooked up that charge roots on it. That was done for somewhere between 8 and 10 hours each time?
Probably, yes.
Okay. Great. So it was a constant charge at whatever you determined was?
Yes.
So for 8 or 10 hours each time, the water was getting electrified or juiced?
Yes.
Okay. Did you give any consideration to the possibility that by electrifying the water, there would be some sort of chemical reaction?
Yes, there was.
So you thought there was a chemical reaction?
Yes, that's
Okay.
what happens, yeah.
Okay. And chemical reaction you're talking about is making the water more negative, right?
Yes.
Did you think maybe there was a possibility that something else could be happening with the water?
No.
And you would agree that before someone sells the water to the public, they should know exactly what's in it, right?
Would you say that again?
Before a bottled water manufacturer sells their water product to the public, they should know exactly what's in it, right?
Yes,
And since you didn't know about the hydrogen, you didn't know exactly what was in the
I
concentrate.
guess not, no.
Okay, and with regards to the concentrate, the 150 gallons that you, or excuse me, 75 gallons, I guess, you made, that was ultimately subdivided into these 5-gallon concentrate?
I don't know how, that was done at the real water. Exactly what they did, I wouldn't want to conjecture on, because I didn't follow that.
You just made it in the concentrate room. Did you actually go there and make it?
No.
Where did you make it at? You said for 5 months you
When
made
I
it.
originally supplied them prior to our agreement,
Mhm.
I made it myself.
Okay.
And
Where
I
at?
made it in 3-gallon jugs at the time, and I was renting a small, what I'd call a shop or office.
Okay,
And I had the water hook up and
and ultimately they had a concentrate room of their own, right?
yes.
And did you make concentrate in there?
I didn't get involved with them in that operation as far as how they will call that down, no.
Did you teach Lane Jones how to make the concentrate?
Yes,
Okay. And you know where he made it at?
yes,
Where did he make it at?
at the real water plant,
Do you know if there was a concentrate room, a separate dedicated concentrate room?
yes,
You actually in there?
yes, I've been there,
Okay. And the formula was a big secret, right?
yes,
And the concentrate room was restricted to you, Mr. Jones, maybe his father, anybody else?
yes. Well, to my knowledge, that was it, yes.
Okay. And we talked about the FDA finding hydrazine in the water.
Yes,
That's something Real Water should have known about one way or the other before they sold the product. I agree.
well, knowing what we know now, yes.
So I'm not saying you made a mistake, but someone made a mistake somewhere down the line here.
Something went wrong, obviously, yes.
Thank you.
Any cross?
Yes, Ron.
Okay.
Mr. Marlow, good afternoon, Joel Odou for Real Water. Doing okay?
Yes, I'm fine.
How old are you, Mr. Marlow?
I'm 83,
So, when you first invented Real Water was about, what, 16 years ago?
that's my best guess, yes,
Okay, you were about 67 at the time you invented it?
if that's the math, yes.
I checked with my iPhone, I cheated.
Okay, yes.
The Chinese don't do that. Why did you become fascinated with alkaline water? What was it about alkaline water
Oh,
that interested you?
Yes, when I met this couple, we went over, they were living in an apartment, that 2 Russians, the man and wife. And my wife and I went over to their apartment and I had this setup and they showed it and explained it, and I just thought it was fascinating.
Was there something about alkaline water that you liked?
Well, after I started researching water, self-taught again, alkaline water is, depending on what expertise you are involved with, is very healthy, and that was my experience.
And is that why you wanted to make it?
Yes, absolutely.
And you later met Brent Jones from Real Water.
Yes, I knew him prior to that.
And you talked to Brent Jones about this product, right?
Yes,
And did Real Water start in roughly 2008? Does that sound about right to you?
is that 12, 13 years ago with your math?
Yeah,
Okay, yes,
close enough.
okay.
Your best recollection is fine, sir. We appreciate your time today. When Real Water started production, do you recall them bringing in a consultant to talk about FDA compliance?
No, I wasn't involved with any of that, but I recall.
Okay, so when the company was set up, Real Water did that?
I assume so, yes.
Okay, and so you weren't involved in the setup of the company?
I was involved in the setup of the devices and that sort of thing, but not the company, no.
Your involvement was in the making of the concentrate, is that
Right.
fair?
Yes,
And at the time that Real Water started in their business, you had a shop, you were making the concentrate,
right,
and then at some point, you turned over the making of the concentrate to Blaine Jones, is that
Yes.
right?
yes,
And then Blaine Jones would make the concentrate at the Real Water Desert Inn facility,
yes.
and you would go over and supervise him making it?
Well, originally, I was there, I wasn't there hardly at all they were in operation 11, 12 years,
Right.
and I wasn't there very often.
In
Maybe
the
once a
beginning,
month, if that,
in the beginning though, you were there to help
yes,
show Blaine how to make the concentrate, is that fair?
yes, I was.
Did you have any participation? Real Water would send the water out to laboratories for testing. Did you have any participation in that?
No, I did not, yeah.
The times that you would get inquiries or questions from Blaine would be how to make the concentrate, is that fair?
Yes,
And were there times that he would talk to you about making the concentrate? Just general
well,
questions?
yes, I guess so, yes,
So you were available, if he called you
yes,
with a question, you were available to him?
yes.
And over the years, as the business progressed, it sounds like you're getting those questions sort of tapered off, is that fair?
Yeah, I had very little involvement with them for the latter few years.
And the very first time that you heard that somebody had been injured from Real Water was as part of the litigation, is that fair?
Say that again,
Yeah, the very first time you heard somebody said they got sick
yes,
was after the lawsuit, isn't that fair? You don't understand my question?
no, not fully, no,
Okay. The first time you heard of hydrazine, was that part of a lawsuit?
okay, yes,
That was the very first time you ever heard of it, is that fair?
yes, okay,
And you agree with that?
I guess, yes.
Okay. Mr. Marlow, again, thank you so much for coming today. We really appreciate it. Mr. Kemp, we have some follow-up questions for you. I appreciate your time. Also, the jury may have a question.
Name, read that right?
No, Your Honor.
Any questions from any jurors? Okay. Mr. Marlow, thank you very much.
Thank you,
Just watch your step in the TV.
I will.
Your Honor, can I make two briefly to make sure Mr. Marlow is out of the room?
Sure.
Okay.
Next.
Yes, Your Honor, we'd like to call Mr. Kazan to the same place.
Right this way.
Is that a recommendation?
remain standing, raise your right hand, face the clerk, and be sworn in.
You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Please be seated, statements by your first and last name for the record.
My name is Joseph Tegano, Joseph-Tegano.
Can you hear me okay? Perfect. Mr. Tegano, how are you?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. So, Mr. Tegano, I'm gonna try not to drop all my stuff this time, all right? All right, so I wanna try to stay in this direction, so you don't have to divert your attention from me to the jury, okay? But you may have to look at the screen every once in a while. Mr. Tegano, you've heard a lot about you from your wife, so I'm not gonna repeat a lot of the questions I asked her, okay? You may have to speak up a little bit.
Yes, sir.
You might, if you could scoot a little forward.
Certainly.
There you go.
You recall when you met Mrs. Tegano, sir?
I do.
And when did you meet her?
It was summer of 1978.
So now, we know you met her in the summer of 1978, and we also know you got married to her in 1979,
That is correct.
August 25th.
Correct.
So before meeting Mrs. Tegano, where were you born and raised?
I was born in Pottsville, Pennsylvania, in the coal region in between Harrisburg and Philadelphia.
Did you complete high school?
I did.
After high school, what did you do?
I enlisted in the Navy.
And what year was that?
That was 1967.
Yes, sir. And that would have been around, I guess, around the time of Vietnam, correct?
Yes, it was the height of the Vietnam War.
Did you serve any time or do any deployments in Vietnam?
I did. I was in regular Navy, and then I was assigned to survival training in California, and then they sent me to Vietnam with the Seabees.
With the what?
The Seabees, which was mobile construction battalions.
Okay. Did you do more than one tour in Vietnam?
I did 2 tours, 2 deployments.
Did you receive any accommodations or medals or anything like that?
I did. I received the Combat Action Medal.
And were you honorably discharged from the military?
Yes, sir.
After completing your 2 tours of Vietnam, what did you do next?
I came to Las Vegas. I knew a few people here. I came for a short period of time, and then I went back home to Pennsylvania.
And why did you go back home after coming to Vegas?
My mother was ill at the time, and I was talking to my sisters. I have 4 sisters and a stepbrother, and they said Mom was ill in the hospital, and I said, well, I better, instead of staying here with some friends, I said I better get home. So I went back to Pennsylvania, and I planned on coming right back to Las Vegas, but some things happened, and after a while, I didn't have the money to come back. So I ended up staying there for almost 2 years.
Yes, sir. And it's my understanding that during that 2-year period, you opened up a business with a friend of yours.
Yes, an automotive business. We did foreign car parts and accessories and repair.
Yes, sir. Did you sometime later move back to Las Vegas?
I did. After about a year and a half, I wasn't really happy with my involvement back there, and I needed to find something different. So I sold my half of the business to my partner, and decided to come to Las Vegas.
All right. Now, it's my understanding that for several years you worked for a few maybe 1 or 2 years, for car dealerships here.
I did. I was employed at Friendly Ford and Fairway Chevrolet for about a year.
Then after that, you did what a lot of people do here in Las Vegas, you began working at casinos.
I did.
And how long did you work in the casino business?
I worked about 15 years in the casinos here in Las Vegas.
Just to put it into context, what was the first casino you worked at?
The old Golden Nugget downtown before it was a hotel.
Was it just a casino without the tower?
Yes.
And then what was the last hotel you worked at? What casino?
The last hotel was the Golden Nugget
You went back,
with the hotel.
you like the Golden Nugget.
I had friends
All right. After that, what did you begin doing?
there. I left and I started an insurance business.
And how long were you in the insurance business?
I'm still in the insurance business and 35 years.
It's my understanding that the company you work with now or work for now is Medicare Pro for you,
Correct.
and what does that do?
It's Medicare sales, Medicare supplements and Advantage plans.
Is it fair to say that you've worked your entire life from the time you got out of high school to now?
Yes, sir. Prior to when I was 12 years old.
And what type of work did you do at 12 years of age?
I worked in a local newspaper, taking papers off the printing press and stacking them for delivery. And I worked in a pharmacy, being a delivery person.
Now, knowing your background, let's try to transition to your purchase of real water and then ultimately your drinking of real water, okay?
Yes, sir.
All right. When do you recall first buying real water?
It was late 2019.
All right, was it sometime near December? Or do you have any
Well,
particular recollection of when that was?
initially, I wrote July of 2019 when I spoke to the Southern Nevada Health District. And then in the deposition, I said December of 2019.
All right. So, and we'll get to that, but sometime after you got sick, you were interviewed or spoke with the Southern Nevada Health District?
That, I spoke with the Southern Nevada Health District in, I believe it was March of 2021.
Yes, sir. This is after it became known that real water contained a toxin that was causing injuries?
Yes, sir.
So you started purchasing real water towards the end of 2019. Were you buying the jugs or the retail bottles or both?
I was drinking the retail bottles initially.
And did you ever get home delivery?
I did. I believe home delivery started in January of, I gotta think about it for a second.
Take your time.
I believe it was January of 2020.
Yes, sir. All right. And when do you recall first feeling sick or ill?
It was early November of 2020.
Yes, sir. And you heard me speaking to your wife here.
I did.
And you saw the dates that we put on the screen, correct?
I did.
Right. Did that refresh your recollection in terms of the time?
It did.
Do you recall passing out at that point?
I do.
And what do you remember about that occasion?
I don't remember a lot, but the little that I do recall
Yes, sir.
is that I went back for, my wife took me to LabCorp for a blood draw. And what I do remember is I remember being in a chair like this. And I was down, my head was down, and I could hear my wife say, "Joe." Excuse me. I get emotional thinking about my wife.
No, take your time, sir.
I had my head down, and she said, Joe, are you there? And I could hear her, but I couldn't respond. And it was very upsetting. I mean, it was just was out of it, but I could hear her saying, Joe, can you hear me? Are you there? And I could hear her, but I couldn't respond.
Yes, sir. Now, your wife seemed to recognize something different about you even before this LabCorp incident.
Yes, sir,
Did you recognize any differences in yourself at that time?
I did.
Did you try to figure out what it was?
I was concerned. I felt like I was losing my equilibrium
Yes, sir.
and just didn't feel right. It was like, it was abnormal. It just wasn't me.
Yes, sir. Did you have any weakness?
I did. I was weak and I was unsteady.
Your wife described it earlier about walking places and putting your hands on things to keep your balance.
I did, as well as when I was going up and down the stairs, we have to live in a 2-story home. And I would put one hand on the railing and the other hand on the wall, going up and then coming down. I was very concerned,
Yes, sir.
and I was using both hands.
Yes, sir. Did you feel that perhaps you were losing the ability to concentrate or focus?
Yes, sir.
Prior to going to LabCorp, let me ask it this way, what made you want to get your blood test at LabCorp?
I was directed by my wife, who had spoken with my primary care physician.
Yes, sir.
So it wasn't something that I initiated. She said, we gotta go get your blood drawn now. And my daughter, one of my daughters was there, or met us there, I'm not sure which. And, you know, my wife took me for the blood draw. My daughter was not there at that point in time.
Yes, sir. So obviously your wife recognized something was going on. And she uses those kind words, we gotta go, that really meant you gotta go and get your blood tested.
Yes, sir.
And that's what you did. Do you recall being seen or at least looked at by paramedics?
I do. There was a team there. I remember they had the gurney out and they put me in, and they were talking to me, and I remember there was a conversation with my wife primarily because I was just sitting there listening.
Yes, sir. And eventually you went home.
Yes, sir.
Do you recall why your wife decided that, okay, you're not getting any better and we gotta go to the hospital?
She said to me, she said, you're not functioning well. You're not listening to me. You're not hearing me. And you need to go back to the hospital.
At this point, do you put up any resistance? Do you tell your wife, you know, I can make it, I can,
Yeah, I pretty much blow things off when it comes to me, and I don't like to share that, you know, if something's going wrong, I just go, it's all right, I'll be okay. That's been my MO. And she said, no, we're going to, and you're going back to the hospital.
so obviously she won that argument.
She did.
All right. And you went to the hospital on November 6, 2000.
That's correct.
Shane, can you put up the second slide? So, to save time, Mr. Tegano, we just took your symptoms that we saw from your medical records. Do you recall these being some of the symptoms you were suffering from?
All of them.
Can we show exhibit 824, please? So we showed this to your wife earlier today. The blood was drawn, collected on November 5th, 2020. We see your admission to Summerlin Hospital on November 6th, 2020. And then we also show your AST, ALT scores. Did you have any understanding what an AST or ALT score was when you were in the hospital?
Not at that time.
Did the doctor explain it to you?
Yes, sir.
All right, and if you pan over to the right where it says reference range, those are the normal ranges. Do you see that?
Yes, sir.
And obviously your scores are above that significantly. Did the doctors explain what that meant to you?
I really don't recall.
Did the doctors at that point indicate that you may have had something going on with your liver?
Could you repeat that, please?
Sure. Did the doctors indicate that this may indicate these scores, the AST, ALT scores, may suggest that there's a problem going on with your liver? That these were elevated liver function tests?
Yes.
At that point, did you know what was causing your elevated liver enzyme?
I had no idea.
So let's go to Exhibit 825. John, again, I believe all of these have been stipulated.
Correct, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, John. So again, this shows the admit day of November 6, 2020, and a discharge date of November 7, 2020. And now your AST and ALT scores have increased. Do you see that?
I do.
So do you know why they were increasing at this point? Did the doctor explain to you?
I have no idea.
And were you still suffering from the same symptoms while you were in the hospital?
Yes, sir.
And Ms. Tegano was there with you?
She was.
Were you able to see your children or your grandchildren while you were in the hospital?
No, sir.
At this point, are you worried about what's going on?
Absolutely.
You can tell your wife was worried. You can tell your wife was worried.
She is the worrier in the family.
So eventually you're discharged on the 7th. You go back home. Generally, what kind of condition were you in when you went back home?
I was still experiencing weakness, unsteadiness,
Yes, sir.
just a general not feeling well.
Were you in the bed? Were you walking around? What were you doing?
For the most part, so we have a 2-story home, and in the family room, we have a large couch, and I spend most of my time on the couch.
Yes, sir. Well, we know that on the 9th, you went back to the hospital. Why?
I was experiencing the same issues over again, dizziness, wateriness, vision impaired. I had flashes that I was watching TV and my vision started flashing.
Did you think at any time you were dehydrated or something you'd eaten or drank was causing these problems?
I had no idea what it was, but as my wife indicated earlier, I have 2 son-in-laws that are both paramedic firefighters that my wife was speaking to. They said, have them drink more water.
So now, did you begin drinking even more of the real water?
I did.
And not getting any better? So you go back to the hospital again, and you spend another night in the hospital. Do you feel any better?
I started to feel a little better.
All right. Let me show you Exhibit 826. This is from your second stay at the hospital. At this point, your AST and ALT scores are still high, but they're coming down. Are you drinking more of the hospital water at this point?
Yes, sir.
It's my understanding that between this time, sometime in November 2020, all the way through March, you had this conversation. Well, I believe the conversation with the Southern Valley Health District took place in March, correct?
Correct.
Between that time, you're still getting real water?
I was getting real water up until the end of March 2021.
Okay, were you drinking any less of it? Do you know what happened?
Same amount that I always drink.
Somehow you started feeling better?
Yeah.
And you don't know why?
No, sir.
Is it fair to say, Mr. Tegano, that this was a traumatic experience for you?
No question about it.
is it fair to say that you did not know what was happening with you causing your elevated liver function test?
Absolutely,
Was it a trying time for your family?
definitely.
Since then, have you continued periodically to get your liver test?
I have.
Let me show you exhibit 827. At the top of this, you'll see the date of January 25th, 2022. If you can highlight that for me, Shane. Right there at the top, date. Thank you. And Dr. Prabhu, is he one of your physicians?
Yes, sir, my primary care.
All right, and he referred you to digestive disease specialist, correct?
Yes, sir.
And if we could go to page 2 of this document, Shane? Could you highlight what's the next slide? All right. Under impression, abnormal liver function test as of that date. Were you informed of that, sir?
Honestly, I don't recall.
So this was roughly a little more than 2 years ago. And based upon this test, it shows that you have an abnormal liver function test. Understood?
Yes, sir.
Have you spoken to your doctor about what this means?
I have.
And did your doctor explain to you what this means?
He said you have abnormal liver and your AST and ALT are not within range, and that I could have hepatitis.
Let me show you exhibit 828, please. This was taken 2 months later. Would you highlight the date for me, Shane, please? And so 2 months later, you go and you take another test, Mr. Tegano. You recall doing that?
I do.
And Shane, if you can show me the impression for that test. Go to the next slide, actually, Shane. Slide number 10. So this one not only shows abnormal liver function test, but also fatty liver on ultrasound. You see that?
Yes, sir.
Did you speak to your doctor about that?
I did.
What did your doctor tell you about that?
He said lose some weight.
Other than losing the weight, did he inform you that this is an issue with your liver that's continuing?
He did.
And I appreciate that. You, despite being in this circumstance, still have a sense of humor. But does that concern you? That now you're getting these abnormal liver function tests even 2 years after drinking your water?
No question about
It seems to concern your wife.
it. Yes.
Then finally, exhibit 829, please. And this was just roughly 4 months ago, February of this year. Highlight the date for me. Thank you. Then you show me the next slide in terms of the impressions, Shane. So again, 3 years later, more than 3 years later, you're still showing now abnormal liver function tests.
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Tegano, you heard the pathologist speak here, didn't you?
I did.
Did you hear him indicate that, based upon what he's reviewed, that consuming real water more likely than not has caused permanent injury to the plaintiff's liver?
It actually calls for speculation.
Two approves.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
So you could ask again.
Thank you so much. Mr. Tegano, I'm gonna ask the same question again for just to refresh your recollection you've gotten from our conversation with the bench. You heard the pathologists talk about the permanency of injury to the liver based upon what he's reviewed and the people who consume the oil.
Yes, sir.
Does that give you concern? Does it give you concern?
Without question.
Obviously, it gives your wife concern about your permanent condition.
Yes, sir.
And do you intend to continue getting your liver tested in the future, sir?
I would say every 3 to 6 months.
Yes, sir. And that's a concern that you did not have before consuming your water.
Absolutely.
I have no further questions. Thank you so much, Mr. John. Oh, yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Wong. Joe, you want it?
Oh, no, I'll see you. Thank you. Mr. Tegano, good afternoon, Joel Lee for the order. You ready to proceed, sir?
Pardon?
Are you ready to proceed?
I am.
Between your hearing and my hearing, this should be,
Yeah, we're both hard of hearing.
Mr. Tegano, I'm sorry for what you went through. I'm going to start there. That real life made you sick. I want to ask you just very briefly, and I'm going to make it easy. Are your medical bills approximately $86,277.90? Does that sound right to you?
Pretty close.
Thank you, sir. Sounds like, again, I had the privilege of going second, so I was able to look at the dates when you were sick. But it sounds like you got sick on a Thursday. And then Friday I went to the doctor, and then Friday night went to the hospital, November 6th. Does that sound about right?
That's what's documented. I was getting sick a few days prior to that.
You were, and you're not a complainer, right? So it took a lot for you to go to the hospital.
Yes, sir.
I don't want to minimize that. And then it looked like you stayed in the hospital that Saturday, and then they sent you home on Sunday. Does that sound right?
Yes, sir.
And then Monday, you had to go back to the hospital and stayed through till Tuesday. Does that sound right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the time you were in the hospital, they didn't know what was making you sick, right?
No, sir.
You learned much later, like
It wasn't until March.
March, that real water had made you sick. Is that fair?
It wasn't until March.
Yeah, it wasn't until March that you learned that real water had made you sick. Is that fair?
Correct.
And obviously that was a time of COVID, so people were staying home, right?
Yes, sir.
Sorry for that. To date, has any medical provider told you that you're going to need future medical treatment for your symptoms that you attribute to your consumption of real water?
The only conversation I recall is with gastroenterologist.
Okay.
Said, we'll check this periodically.
Okay, we'll check it periodically, but no doctor has said, hey, you're going to need future treatment because you consumed real water. That's true, isn't it?
That is true.
And no doctor has told you personally that you personally have a permanent injury resulting to your consumption of real water. That's also true, isn't it?
That is true.
And I recognize that this was a horrible experience for you. And I recognize that I'm going to start with thank you for your services as a CV. I recognize as a member of the United States Armed Forces that you don't like to complain. You don't like to talk about your problems. Is that fair?
That's correct.
And so far, you haven't seen a psychologist or a mental professional or somebody for counseling. Is that true?
That's true.
And at this point in time, you don't plan to do that. Is that also fair?
That's true.
Mr. Tegano, again, very sorry for what you went through. I really appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Can you redirect?
Nothing, Your Honor. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions for me? Oh, hey, hold on, sorry, hold on. I'm not the loudest person either. Come on up. Okay, Mr. Tegano, we have a question from one of our jurors. What is, and I may butcher this word, but what is paresthesia in hands?
That's pins and needles in my extremities.
Any follow-up questions?
Just one, Your Honor, just for clarity. Can you describe when that paresthesia started happening, Mr. Tegano?
It happened during that period of time, actually, about a day or two before I went to the hospital.
Okay. And was that something you had intermittently?
No,
All right. So before you went to the hospital, you had it? After you got out of the hospital, did it happen anymore?
yes, it did.
Okay. And then when you went back to the hospital, did it happen some more?
Yes, it did.
Okay. Has that stopped happening since then?
No, it hasn't.
All right. So that still happens every once in a while?
Yes, it is.
Thank you so much. That's all I have, though.
Any cross?
And to date, no doctor has told you that was caused by real water. Is that fair? To date, no doctor has told you that was caused by real water. Is that fair?
That is correct.
Thank you, sir.
We have one more question.
Oh, cool.
Thank you.
Okay, another couple questions. So Mr. Tegano is seeing gastro doctor. Is this for GERD?
Yes,
Was GERD diagnosed before or after fatty liver?
I believe it was the same time frame.
Thank you. Any follow-up?
Nothing else, Your Honor.
No, thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, now. Just be careful with it.